Welcome to a colossal clash of global icons as the 2026 FIFA World Cup electrifies the planet. A massive mystery bridges the worlds of music and sports. Who are the football heroes capturing the hearts of the world's biggest boy band? Today, we are exposing the secret fandoms of BTS. Which member is losing sleep over a legendary striker's final dance? Who draws artistic inspiration from a rising midfield maestro? Get ready for the ultimate emotional countdown linking K-pop kings to the kings of the pitch. Who claims the crown of their ultimate obsession? Let's find out. Number 7. The Brain of BTS, a Nordic maestro's masterpiece. Have you ever stopped to wonder what happens when the brilliant philosophical mind of a global pop icon collides with the raw, unpredictable, and fiercely tactical world of international football? For Kim Namjoon, known to the world as RM, the visionary leader and intellectual powerhouse of BTS, the beautiful game is not merely a sport of physical dominance, but a canvas of moving art, a high-stakes chess match played on a vibrant green board. When you carry the weight of leading the biggest band on the planet, dealing with the relentless pressure of global expectations and artistic integrity, you naturally gravitate towards individuals who bear a similar burden with grace, intelligence, and an unwavering vision. That is precisely why RM's ultimate football obsession for the historic 2026 FIFA World Cup is none other than the Norwegian midfield maestro and captain Martin Ødegaard. Imagine the scene, deep within the dimly lit, state-of-the-art confines of his archive studio in Seoul, where platinum plaques line the walls and synthesizers hum with potential energy. RM isn't just watching a game, he is dissecting a symphony. He doesn't merely cheer for goals, he appreciates the spaces between the defenders, the calculated geometry of a perfectly weighted through ball, the rhythmic control of the midfield tempo that mirrors the careful production of a billboard-topping track. RM sees football as poetry in motion, and in Ødegaard, he has found his favorite contemporary poet. The 2026 FIFA World Cup, hosted across the sprawling landscapes of North America, sets the ultimate stage for a narrative that feels almost cinematic, a story that resonates deeply with Namjoon's own journey. For the first time since the legendary days of 1998 in France, the Norwegian national team has clawed its way back into the global spotlight, armed with a terrifyingly talented golden generation that has set the footballing world ablaze. Did you know that under Ødegaard's calculating leadership, alongside the sheer physical force of Erling Haaland, Norway executed an absolutely flawless qualification campaign? They steamrolled through UEFA qualifying Group I, securing 8 victories in 8 matches, amassing a perfect 24 points, and comfortably dismantling giants like Italy to secure their direct ticket to the Americas. RM, a man who appreciates the grind of building an empire from the ground up, is utterly captivated by this underdog redemption story. He watches intently as Ødegaard prepares to lead his Nordic warriors into the brutal battleground of the World Cup group stage, where they are slated to face the colossal might of France, the ferocious physicality of Senegal, and the unpredictable tenacity of Iraq in stadiums across Boston and New Jersey. But what is the profound, invisible thread that truly connects the towering rapper from Ilsan to the blonde-haired playmaker from Drammen? It is the shared trauma and ultimate triumph of the child prodigy curse. RM burst onto the underground hip-hop scene as a young teenager, shouldering immense expectations and facing crushing scrutiny from both the idol and rap communities, forced to prove his worth in a world that demanded perfection. Similarly, Martin Ødegaard was thrust into the blinding spotlight of international fame when he was signed by the legendary Real Madrid at the tender age of 16. The world expected him to be the undisputed king of football overnight, and when the growing pains naturally occurred, the media prematurely labeled him a flop, a forgotten wonder kid lost in the relentless machinery of modern football. RM knows that dark, isolating feeling all too well. He understands the psychological warfare required to survive when the whole world is watching you stumble. Yet Ødegaard did not break. He reinvented himself through humble loan spells, working tirelessly in the shadows until he found his true home at Arsenal, blossoming into a formidable captain who commands respect not through loud, aggressive demands, but through supreme technical ability, emotional intelligence, and an unparalleled work ethic. When RM watches Ødegaard glide across the pitch at the 2026 World Cup, seamlessly dropping deep to collect the ball, his head constantly swiveling on a pivot to scan the field, mapping out the trajectories of 21 other players in fractions of a second, he sees a reflection of his own leadership style. Both men are orchestrators who make everyone around them infinitely better. They absorb the chaotic pressure of their environments and transform it into harmonious, breathtaking art. As the summer of 2026 heats up and millions of fans scream until their lungs give out, RM will be sitting quietly, perhaps sipping on an iced Americano, analyzing how Ødegaard dictates the soul of the Norwegian team. Will this historic generation finally break the curse and advance past the round of 16? Can the elegant playmaker weave his magic against the defensive titans of France and Senegal? For Namjoon, the final score almost feels secondary to the breathtaking performance itself, as he finds endless inspiration in the resilience, the tactical genius, and the quiet, enduring leadership of a man who turned his heaviest burdens into his most beautiful masterpiece. But the intrigue doesn't stop there, does it? Think about the sheer magnitude of the pressure waiting for Ødegaard on American soil. As RM well knows, walking onto a global stage, whether it's the Grammy Awards or the MetLife Stadium, changes a person. The air becomes thinner, the lights burn hotter, and the margin for error shrinks to absolute zero. RM often speaks in his live streams about the philosophy of art and human endurance, expressing how the most authentic beauty is born from immense, almost unbearable pressure, much like a diamond forming deep within the earth. He sees this exact phenomenon in the way Ødegaard receives a pass in tight, suffocating spaces. When two hulking French midfielders collapse on Ødegaard in their highly anticipated Group E match in Boston, the world holds its breath. Will he panic? Will he lose possession? But RM already knows the answer. With a subtle drop of the shoulder and a delicate, almost imperceptible flick of his left boot, Ødegaard effortlessly bypasses the pressure, splitting the defense with a pass so precise it feels as though it was calculated by a supercomputer, instantly turning a moment of extreme danger into a lethal counterattack. It is this specific brand of cerebral football that has captured the BTS leader's heart. While other fans might obsess over flashy stepovers or explosive, thunderous strikes from outside the box, RM is completely mesmerized by the unseen game, the intellectual warfare happening in the milliseconds before the ball is even touched. Furthermore, the 2026 World Cup is a tournament of firsts and historical milestones, heavily expanding to 48 teams, meaning the tactical variety and the sheer physical toll on the players will be greater than ever in the history of the sport. The Norwegian team, possessing a direct, vertical playing style with aggressive attacking transitions designed by their pragmatic head coach, Ståle Solbakken, relies entirely on Ødegaard to be the essential link, the vital bridge between their sturdy defense and the terrifying, goal-hungry machine that is Erling Haaland. Namjoon, who has spent over a decade meticulously bridging the diverse, often clashing personalities and musical styles of his 6 bandmates to create the unified, world-conquering sound of BTS, respects the psychological and tactical weight of being that bridge. It is a thankless job where the mistakes are brutally amplified and the brilliant subtleties are often ignored by the casual observer. Yet, just as BTS would not function without RM's steady hand guiding their conceptual direction, Norway's golden generation would be nothing more than a collection of fast runners without Ødegaard's visionary compass directing their every movement. So, as the referee's whistle blows to kick off the monumental 2026 tournament, prepare yourselves to witness a spectacular dual performance. Martin Ødegaard painting his masterpiece on the lush green grass of North America, and Kim Namjoon halfway across the globe decoding every brushstroke, every tactical shift, and every moment of brilliant, silent leadership, finding profound inspiration for his next great musical epic in the beautiful, chaotic symphony of the World Cup. Number 6. Jin, the timeless legend, a worldwide phenomenon, the magic of Messi. Have you ever felt the crushing, unstoppable weight of time ticking away, a relentless clock telling you that your best days are supposedly behind you, only to rise up and completely shatter the world's expectations with a simple, devastating smile? For Kim Seok-jin, the undeniably charismatic, incredibly hard-working, and ever-youthful oldest member of BTS, age has never been a barrier. It is simply a beautiful badge of honor, a rich tapestry of experience, and a profound testament to his enduring resilience in an industry obsessed with fleeting youth. As the highly anticipated and dramatically expanded 2026 FIFA World Cup sweeps across the colossal, roaring stadiums of North America, Jin finds his ultimate emotional mirror and undeniable footballing obsession in a man who is literally defying the unforgiving laws of human biology and athletic longevity, the supreme Argentine maestro Lionel Messi. Picture this incredible parallel for a moment. Jin, often affectionately and confidently dubbed worldwide handsome, has spent his entire glittering career constantly adapting, rigorously evolving his stunning vocal range and proving to relentless critics that he is not just the visual pillar of BTS, but an irreplaceable, deeply emotional artistic core who only gets remarkably better, wiser, and more potent with every passing year. When Jin looks out at the lush, perfectly manicured green pitches of the 2026 World Cup, his eyes are entirely glued to the mesmerizing, almost fictional movements of the 38-year-old Lionel Messi, a man who, just days shy of his 39th birthday, is orchestrating the beautiful game with the exact same terrifying brilliance and surgical precision he possessed a decade ago in his Barcelona prime. Did you know the jaw-dropping historical context of what Messi is achieving right now on American soil, playing in front of sold-out crowds who treat him like a visiting deity? After finally conquering his ultimate heartbreaking demon and lifting the golden, elusive World Cup trophy in the sweltering heat of Qatar 4 years ago, the vast majority of pundits and fans logically assumed the little genius from Rosario would gracefully bow out, riding peacefully into the sunset of Major League Soccer with Inter Miami, content with having completed football itself. But true legends, the ones whose names echo through eternity, never stop writing their story until the ink runs completely dry. In a narrative so cinematic and breathtaking that it feels scripted by Hollywood's finest writers, Messi has arrived in North America for an unprecedented, history-making 6th FIFA World Cup appearance, a mind-boggling milestone that makes him the first male player ever to achieve such a monumental feat, officially surpassing his eternal, legendary rival Cristiano Ronaldo, who reached 5. Jin, who intimately knows exactly what it feels like to shoulder the monumental, suffocating expectations of carrying a nation's immense pride on his back, while simultaneously dealing with the natural physical tolls and exhausting demands of a grueling, decade-long career at the top of the pop culture mountain, watches Messi's every calculated step with a profound, quiet, and deeply empathetic understanding. The glorious climax of this global obsession exploded during Argentina's breathtaking, high-stakes opening match of the Group J stage against a fiercely determined and physically imposing Algerian national team at the magnificent, pulsating Kansas City Stadium on a balmy Tuesday evening. While millions of skeptical viewers worldwide debated if the veteran superstar still had the stamina, the lung capacity, and the explosive pace to compete at the absolute highest tier of international football, Jin was probably sitting in his luxurious gaming chair halfway across the world, clutching his beloved RJ plush toy, perhaps sipping on a warm drink, fully and unconditionally believing in the enduring magic of the iconic number 10. And boy, did Lionel Messi deliver an absolute, undisputed masterclass that sent seismic shockwaves across the globe and completely broke the internet. In a performance that will instantly be etched into the eternal golden archives of footballing history, Messi completely and systematically dismantled the Algerian defense, scoring a spectacular, jaw-dropping hat trick to comfortably seal a dominant 3-0 victory for the reigning champions. But let's dive much deeper into the astonishing, mind-bending facts that make this specific moment so incredibly monumental for an adoring fan like Jin. With those 3 masterful, surgically precise strikes, Messi not only gloriously matched the legendary German striker Miroslav Klose's seemingly untouchable, almost mythical all-time record of 16 World Cup goals, but he also brutally and decisively shattered Cristiano Ronaldo's long-standing record to officially become the oldest player in the entire history of the tournament to score a hat trick, doing so at the astonishing, seemingly impossible age of 38 years and 359 days. Can you even begin to comprehend the sheer magnitude and dedication required for that achievement? He opened his historic account in the 17th minute with a vintage, absolutely unstoppable left-footed rocket from completely outside the penalty box, a trademark devastating strike that officially leveled the legendary Brazilian Rivellino's long-standing record for long-range World Cup goals. For Jin, who meticulously and painstakingly crafts every single high note and emotional breath in his gorgeous solo ballads like Epiphany and The Astronaut, watching Messi calmly curate these spectacular goals is exactly like watching a master vocalist hit the perfect soul-stirring crescendo after a lifetime of relentless, unseen practice. But it isn't just the flashy statistics, the record-breaking numbers, or the golden boots that truly captivate the eldest BTS member. It is the raw, unfiltered, and deeply relatable human vulnerability hiding just behind the godlike, superhuman status on the pitch. Number 5. Suga. The silent assassin, a captain's ultimate sacrifice, the roar of the Asian tiger. Have you ever wondered what exactly goes through the brilliant, fiercely independent mind of a musical genius who prefers to speak his profound truths entirely through relentless, agonizing hard work rather than empty, flashy words? For Min Yoongi, globally beloved as Suga and the raw, unfiltered rap alter ego Auguste D, life has always been perceived as an unforgiving, high-stakes battlefield where only the absolute toughest, most resilient souls manage to survive and ultimately conquer their towering demons. He is the quiet, brooding, and incredibly meticulous architect of BTS, a man who has famously and bravely battled through debilitating physical injuries, crushing mental health struggles, and the suffocating, intensely heavy expectations of an entertainment industry that constantly demands absolute, robotic perfection from its biggest stars. Therefore, when this stoic, passionately basketball-loving musical maestro decides to turn his piercing, deeply observant eyes to the sprawling, vibrant green pitches of the 2026 FIFA World Cup currently sweeping across North America, his absolute devotion, profound emotional respect, and unwavering admiration are reserved exclusively for a man who perfectly embodies that exact same unyielding warrior spirit, an athletic icon who carries the massive, crushing hopes of 50 million devoted people on his weary but utterly unbreakable shoulders. The legendary, history-making captain of the South Korean national team, the incomparable Son Heung-min. Just picture the incredibly potent, almost cinematic synergy between these two modern-day Korean titans for a moment. Yoongi, voluntarily locked away in the dimly lit confines of his genius lab studio in Seoul, pouring his raw, bleeding soul into a condenser microphone at 3 in the morning to craft a masterpiece, and Heung-min, thousands of miles away, pushing his burning lungs and aching muscles to the absolute, terrifying breaking point in the sweltering, unforgiving summer heat of a World Cup knockout match. Did you know that the 2026 World Cup represents a monumental, emotionally charged, and highly bittersweet last dance for the 33-year-old Tottenham Hotspur superstar? After spending over a decade systematically and ruthlessly dismantling the toughest, most brutal defenses in the English Premier League and firmly cementing his undisputed legacy as arguably the greatest Asian footballer in the entire history of the sport, Son has arrived in North America with a singular, burning, and almost desperate mission to violently drag his beloved Taegek Warriors into the deepest, most dangerous knockout stages of the tournament, completely defying all logical sporting odds and silencing the relentless, cynical international doubters once and for all. Suga, who intimately and painfully understands the heavy, isolating burden of being a global trailblazer who forced the Western world to respect South Korean artistry, watches Son's every calculated move on the pitch with a deep, almost spiritual sense of kinship. Yoongi knows that when you are the first to violently break through a thick glass ceiling, the sharp shards inevitably fall directly on your own head, leaving scars that the cheering public rarely gets to see. Son didn't just have to be a good player, he had to be flawlessly, undeniably, and terrifyingly great, enduring punishing, almost Spartan training regimes orchestrated by his famously strict father from a very young age, willingly sacrificing his youth, his personal life, and his physical comfort to meticulously hone a devastating, world-class two-footed strike that continues to strike pure terror into the hearts of elite opposition goalkeepers. Yoongi sees his own grueling, agonizing underground hip-hop roots perfectly and beautifully reflected in Son's legendary, relentless, and uncomplaining work ethic. The 2026 World Cup Group A stage has already provided a highly theatrical, heart-stopping backdrop for this intense, silent obsession. South Korea found themselves unfortunately thrust into a grueling, incredibly demanding group, forced to navigate the hostile territory of the host nation Mexico, battle the highly physical and relentless South African squad, and outsmart the tactically disciplined and stubborn Czech Republic. When South Korea finally stepped onto the pitch at the magnificent, roaring Guadalajara Stadium for their crucial, high-stakes encounter against the Czechs, the suffocating tension in the atmosphere was thick enough to cut with a butcher's knife. For Suga, who has courageously performed his most vulnerable solo tracks in front of hundreds of thousands of screaming, expectant fans in colossal stadiums around the entire globe, the deafening, intimidating roar of the opposition crowd is a familiar, terrifying beast that he has learned to tame. He watched intently on his screen as Son, proudly wearing the heavy, symbolic captain's armband, orchestrated the Korean attack not with frantic, panicked shouts or theatrical gestures, but with cold, calculated, and deadly precision. The defining, unforgettable moment of the match, a sequence of pure, unadulterated sporting magic that surely made Yoongi leap aggressively from his comfortable studio chair, occurred in the dying, breathless, and chaotic minutes of the game. With the score locked in a tense, nerve-wracking stalemate and the South Korean players visibly gasping for air, their legs incredibly heavy with agonizing exhaustion, it was the aging captain who somehow summoned a miraculous, superhuman burst of adrenaline. Receiving a desperate pass deep in his own defensive half, Son suddenly exploded forward, his legs pumping like powerful industrial pistons, aggressively eating up the lush green grass as he launched a terrifying, blistering solo counterattack that caught the entire world off guard. He elegantly and effortlessly bypassed one desperately lunging defender, physically outmuscled another larger opponent, and with the cold, calculating eyes of a seasoned hitman, unleashed a vicious curling strike from the very edge of the penalty box that slammed spectacularly and violently into the absolute top corner of the net, sealing a glorious, dramatic, and historic 2-1 victory for South Korea. But for a fiercely observant, emotionally intelligent artist like Min Yoongi, the true profound beauty of that unforgettable moment wasn't merely the spectacular athletic achievement of the goal itself. It was the raw, unrestrained, and deeply vulnerable human emotion that immediately followed the chaotic celebration. As the ball violently hit the back of the net, Son didn't perform a choreographed, arrogant dance or a boastful celebration. He simply dropped heavily to his knees on the grass, his face buried deeply in his trembling hands, completely and utterly overwhelmed by the sheer crushing magnitude of the immense psychological pressure he had just triumphantly released. He had literally carried his team, his proud nation, and his own demanding, unforgiving legacy across the finish line through pure, unfiltered, and desperate force of will. Yoongi knows that specific, exhausting kind of triumph better than anyone. He knows exactly what it feels like to pour every single ounce of your physical and emotional being into a live performance, leaving absolutely nothing left in the tank, completely sacrificing your own well-being for the greater good of the group. Furthermore, the striking, undeniable physical parallels between the two men add another fascinating, deeply poignant layer to this profound admiration. Yoongi famously underwent an agonizing, highly risky shoulder surgery, bravely enduring months of painful, frustrating, and lonely physical rehabilitation simply to ensure he could continue performing dynamic choreography at the highest possible level for his beloved fans. He intimately understands the fragile, terrifying mortality of an athlete's physical body and the mental torture of recovering from a severe injury. Number 4. Jhope, the Samba Prince, a dance through the storm, the joy of Vini Jr. Have you ever considered the profound, almost spiritual connection between the explosive, perfectly timed choreography of a world-class pop performance and the beautiful, unpredictable rhythm of South American football? For Jungkook, known universally as the radiant, eternally optimistic Jhope, movement is not simply a physical action, it is a vital language, a powerful tool of self-expression, and a defiant weapon against the darkness of the world. As the main dancer and the undisputed rhythmic heartbeat of BTS, Jhope approaches every single stage with the meticulous, calculating eye of a master choreographer and the boundless, infectious energy of a street dance prodigy. He knows intimately that to truly captivate an audience, you must possess an unbreakable internal rhythm, a flair for the dramatic, and most importantly, an unyielding sense of joy. Therefore, it should come as absolutely no surprise that as the 2026 FIFA World Cup violently shakes the cultural foundations of North America, Jhope's absolute, unwavering devotion is firmly locked onto a player who has literally turned the football pitch into his own personal, globally broadcasted dance floor, the electrifying Brazilian superstar Vinícius Jr. Just close your eyes and imagine the deeply poetic parallel between these two global icons for a moment. Picture Jhope, casually dressed in his signature, effortlessly cool, Hope on the Street streetwear, sitting completely mesmerized in front of a massive television screen in Seoul, meticulously analyzing the lightning-fast footwork of the Real Madrid winger, as if he were studying a rival b-boy in an underground battle in Gwangju. Jhope's artistic roots lie deep within the gritty, highly competitive world of street dance, where respect is earned through sweat, innovation, and an unapologetic display of personality. He sees that exact same raw, unfiltered street-bred magic in Vinícius, a kid who honed his terrifying skills barefoot in the impoverished streets of São Gonçalo, Brazil, learning to effortlessly bypass hardened defenders with the rhythmic fluidity of a seasoned samba dancer. But the profound connection that binds the BTS superstar to the Brazilian talisman goes much, much deeper than a simple appreciation for flashy stepovers and spectacular goals. It is fundamentally rooted in their shared, defiant philosophy of radical joy in the face of overwhelming, suffocating adversity. Jhope famously chose his stage name to represent a beacon of light, consciously deciding to shoulder the heavy, exhausting emotional burden of being the constant sunshine for his bandmates and millions of fans, even on the days when the crushing pressures of global fame threaten to extinguish his own internal flame. He deeply understands the immense psychological toll of constantly smiling through the storm, and who in the modern sporting world has danced through a more terrifying, ugly storm than Vinícius Jr. Over the past few years in Europe, the dazzling Brazilian has been subjected to some of the most horrific, systemic, and vile racial abuse ever witnessed in modern football. Entire stadiums have chanted unspeakable things, trying desperately to break his spirit, to intimidate him, and to physically and emotionally bully him into submission. They demanded that he stop his flamboyant, joyful goal celebrations. They demanded that he stop dancing. But what did Vinícius do? He looked the ugliest facets of humanity dead in the eye, flashed a brilliant, defiant smile, and danced even harder. He launched a global Baila Vini dance that transcended sports, transforming his goal celebrations into powerful, beautiful acts of political and social resistance. For Jhope, a man whose entire artistic identity is built upon spreading hope and positivity through movement, watching Vinícius bravely combat pure hatred with pure, unadulterated joy is the ultimate breathtaking inspiration. As the massive 2026 World Cup tournament unfolds, the narrative surrounding the Brazilian national team is absolutely suffocating with pressure. They arrived in the United States desperate to end an agonizing 2-decade decade-long World Cup drought, heavily relying on Vinicius to finally carry the mythical weight of the Seleccio and lead his nation back to global dominance. Brazil was drawn into a highly intriguing Group C, scheduled to face the tactical brilliance of Morocco, the unpredictable passion of Haiti, and the rugged physical determination of Scotland in massive, roaring venues across the United States. During Brazil's highly anticipated, electrifying opening match against a fiercely organized Moroccan side at the colossal, packed MetLife Stadium in New Jersey, the tension was palpable enough to crack glass. The Moroccan defense was resolute, physical, and determined to completely neutralize the Brazilian flair. But Jhope, watching with bated breath, knows that you can only contain true rhythm for so long before it inevitably explodes. In a moment of pure, breathtaking magic that will be replayed in World Cup highlight reels for decades to come, Vinicius received the ball on the extreme left wing, isolated against two incredibly aggressive defenders. With a subtle, hypnotic drop of his shoulder and a blindingly fast sequence of stepovers that perfectly mirrored the rapid-fire footwork of a hip-hop routine, he completely shattered the Moroccan defensive line. He accelerated with terrifying, explosive pace, gracefully cutting inside before unleashing a devastating curling strike that violently kissed the inside of the far post and nestled perfectly into the back of the net. The stadium absolutely erupted into a sea of delirious yellow and green, but it was the immediate aftermath that truly captured Jhope's heart. Vinicius didn't just celebrate, he ran directly towards the corner flag, his face illuminated with a smile that could power an entire city, and launched into a smooth, rhythmic, and incredibly joyful samba dance, soon joined by his laughing, relieved teammates. In that specific, beautiful moment, the crushing pressure of an entire nation, the dark shadows of past abuses, and the suffocating expectations of the tournament all completely melted away, replaced entirely by the pure, innocent joy of a young man playing the beautiful game exactly the way it was meant to be played. Jhope understands that this specific brand of joy is not a sign of weakness or a lack of focus. It is actually the ultimate, most devastating weapon of a true champion. It takes immense, almost superhuman mental fortitude to step onto a global stage, carrying the heavy scars of the past, and still choose to entertain, to inspire, and to unapologetically dance. As Brazil prepares to face Scotland under the bright, dazzling lights of the Hard Rock Stadium in Miami later in the group stages, Jhope won't just be watching a football match, he will be actively witnessing a masterclass in emotional resilience and artistic expression. He sees in Vinicius Jr. a kindred spirit, a fellow performer who profoundly understands that whether you are executing a flawless, high-octane dance break in front of 80,000 screaming fans at a stadium, or weaving through brutal tackles to score a crucial World Cup goal, the ultimate goal is exactly the same: to boldly light up the dark world, to defiantly spread undeniable happiness, and to prove to everyone watching that absolutely no amount of hate, pressure, or darkness can ever stop the rhythm of a truly beautiful, resilient soul. Number 3. Jimin. The Black Swan of the Pitch, a ballet of speed, the Parisian Prince. Have you ever found yourself completely paralyzed, holding your breath while watching a human being effortlessly defy the fundamental laws of gravity, silently wondering if they are secretly hiding a pair of wings beneath their clothes? For Park Jimin, the breathtakingly elegant lead vocalist, unparalleled main dancer, and the undisputed, mesmerizing it boy of BTS, movement is an ancient, sacred religion. As a former top student of contemporary dance at the prestigious Busan High School of Arts, Jimin perceives the physical world through a remarkably unique, intensely sensitive lens. He understands deeply, perhaps more than anyone else on the planet, that true world-stopping artistry is born from a terrifying, agonizing paradox: the absolute, brutal physical destruction of the human body, cleverly disguised as effortless, weightless, and angelic grace. When Jimin completely dominates a global stage during a hauntingly beautiful performance of Black Swan, his terrifying, explosive power is entirely masked by his fluid, haunting elegance. Therefore, as the monumental globe-spanning 2026 FIFA World Cup aggressively captures the attention of billions across North America, Jimin isn't merely looking for a football player who can score ugly, scrambled goals. He is desperately searching for a fellow dancer, a kindred spirit who treats the sprawling green pitch as a grand theatrical stage. He is looking for someone who can make the impossibly difficult look obscenely easy. And he has absolutely found his magnificent, undisputed muse in the electrifying, terrifyingly brilliant captain of the French national team, the spectacular Parisian prince, Kylian Mbappé. Just imagine the profound, invisible artistic thread connecting these two generational phenomenons for a moment. Jimin, sitting quietly in his pristine, dimly lit living room in Seoul, his intensely focused eyes completely glued to the massive television screen, meticulously watching Mbappé not as a sports fan, but as a fellow master choreographer analyzing a rival's masterpiece. While the rest of the screaming, frenzied world simply sees a ridiculously fast athlete chasing a leather ball, Jimin sees a highly sophisticated, beautifully violent contemporary ballet. He sees the exact same duality in Mbappé that defines his own legendary idol persona. The gentle, charming, and famously sweet offstage smile that completely vanishes the very millisecond the performance begins, instantly replaced by the cold, calculated, and utterly lethal eyes of a ruthless apex predator. Did you know the immense, suffocating psychological baggage Mbappé is carrying into this historic 2026 tournament in the United States? 4 excruciating years ago, in the dramatic, sweltering heat of Qatar, Mbappé delivered arguably the greatest individual performance in the history of World Cup finals, scoring a breathtaking, history-making hat trick, only to suffer the absolute, soul-crushing agony of losing the ultimate prize on penalty kicks to Lionel Messi's Argentina. Jimin knows exactly what it feels like to pour every single ounce of your bleeding soul, your sweat, and your tears into a flawless, historic performance, only to feel like you somehow still fell short of the impossibly high expectations placed upon you. He understands the dark, lonely nights of self-doubt that follow such a monumental heartbreak. But more importantly, Jimin intimately understands the terrifying, burning resolve required to rise from those ashes, stronger, faster, and more undeniable than ever before. Now, in 2026, Mbappé has arrived in North America not just as a prodigious talent, but as the undisputed, hardened leader and captain of a spectacularly talented French squad desperate for redemption. France was drawn into a highly dangerous, physically demanding Group I, placed directly into the absolute firing line against a remarkably disciplined Norway, a fiercely unpredictable Iraq, and the reigning kings of African football, Senegal. The explosive climax of Jimin's intense fascination arrived on a balmy, electric Tuesday evening during France's highly anticipated opening match against the physically imposing Senegalese national team at the colossal, blindingly bright New York, New Jersey stadium, a venue packed with over 80,000 screaming, delirious fans. The Senegalese defense, famous for their brutal physicality, unyielding stamina, and aggressive tackling, had constructed an absolute fortress, deliberately intending to violently bully and intimidate the French attackers. For the first 60 minutes of the tense, grueling match, it was an ugly, bruising battle of attrition. But Jimin, watching with bated breath, knows a universal truth about true superstars. They do not engage in ugly brawls. They simply elevate themselves to a dimension where their opponents cannot follow. In a moment of pure, unadulterated sporting witchcraft that completely shattered the internet and sent seismic shockwaves around the globe, Mbappe finally decided that the performance was over. Receiving a highly pressurized bouncing pass on the extreme left wing, surrounded immediately by two massive lunging Senegalese defenders entirely intent on taking him down, Mbappe didn't panic. He didn't brace for the physical impact. Instead, channeling the exact same fluid, hypnotic body control that Jimin utilizes during his iconic filter solo stage, Mbappe dropped his right shoulder with devastatingly beautiful deception. In a fraction of a millisecond, he executed a blindingly fast, impossibly smooth step-over, completely freezing the defenders in time and space, before hitting the accelerator with a terrifying, explosive burst of pure speed that simply did not look human. He elegantly glided past the bewildered defenders as if they were nothing more than static training cones, cutting violently into the penalty box. Without even breaking his majestic rhythmic stride, he unleashed a vicious curling strike that kissed the absolute top of the net, sealing a spectacular, hard-fought 3-1 victory for Les Bleus. The colossal stadium literally shook to its concrete foundations, but Jimin wasn't looking at the roaring crowd or the wildly celebrating French bench. His eyes were entirely fixed on Mbappe's immediate reaction. The Parisian superstar didn't scream or flex his muscles in arrogant triumph. He simply slid gracefully on his knees across the lush green grass, a calm, deeply satisfied smile slowly spreading across his face, looking exactly like a man who had just successfully landed the final impossible jump in a grueling ballet routine. Number 2. V. The Soulful Conductor, a cinematic masterpiece, The Elegance of Bellingham. Have you ever paused to truly contemplate how a man who famously perceives the frantic, deafeningly loud modern world exclusively through the romantic, sepia-toned, and deeply emotional lens of a vintage film camera might brilliantly interpret the chaotic, physically brutal, and fiercely competitive spectacle of a high-stakes football match? For Kim Tae-young, universally adored by millions around the globe simply as V, the remarkably enigmatic, deeply soulful, and effortlessly stylish baritone vocalist of BTS, life is absolutely not merely a frantic, desperate race to the finish line. It is a rich, sprawling, and beautifully complex jazz composition meant to be savored, analyzed, and deeply felt, note by unpredictable note. When you possess an artistic soul so profoundly unique that you famously named your beloved pet Pomeranian Yantan, meaning coal, because of his dark, striking colors, and when you spend your rare, precious moments of free time listening to crackling vinyl records of Chet Baker and Sammy Davis Jr., while sipping expensive red wine in the dim, atmospheric lighting of your customized living room, you naturally demand a very specific, elevated level of aesthetic brilliance from the entertainment you consume. Therefore, as the colossal, brightly illuminated, and globe-spanning 2026 FIFA World Cup aggressively captures the fervent attention of billions across the sprawling continent of North America, V isn't looking for robotic, calculated efficiency or simple brute athletic force on the pitch. He is desperately, passionately searching for a distinct, undeniable aura, a towering cinematic presence that completely commands the screen without ever needing to shout, and a player who effortlessly turns the violent, muddy battlefield into a sophisticated, velvet-lined jazz lounge. And he has absolutely, unquestionably found his ultimate, breathtaking sporting muse in the regal, elegantly dominant, and brilliantly improvisational English midfield maestro, the sensational, world-conquering Jude Bellingham. Just close your eyes for a second and vividly picture the incredibly potent, almost magical parallel between these two global history-making phenomenons. You have Taeyong, widely celebrated in the fashion and music industries as a true old soul trapped inside the breathtakingly perfect body of a modern pop idol, a man who consistently defies massive commercial trends to release deeply personal, heavily R&B and jazz-infused solo masterpieces like his critically acclaimed album Layover, unapologetically forcing the fast-paced, TikTok-obsessed pop world to dramatically slow down and deeply appreciate his smooth, languid, and deliberate rhythmic tempo. And then, thousands of miles away under the blinding stadium lights, you have Jude Bellingham, a young man who, despite barely being in his early 20s, plays the frantic, high-pressure game of international football with the eerie, calculating calm, the arrogant grace, and the absolute, unshakable maturity of a seasoned 35-year-old veteran who has seen absolutely everything the sport has to offer. Bellingham, heavily adorned in the iconic, pristine white jersey of Real Madrid and proudly wearing the legendary, heavily scrutinized number 10 for the English national team, does not merely run across the grass, he elegantly and fluidly glides, his head constantly upright, completely scanning the chaotic pitch with the sharp, deeply observant and heavily hooded eyes of a veteran film director, meticulously planning his very next award-winning cinematic shot. Did you know the immense, terrifying, and historically suffocating psychological weight that Bellingham is currently carrying into this monumental 2026 tournament? For exactly 60 long, agonizing, and heartbreak-filled years, the incredibly passionate and notoriously unforgiving English football fans have desperately, tearfully begged for their national team to finally bring football home, enduring decades of catastrophic penalty shootout failures, controversial refereeing decisions, and deeply humiliating premature tournament exits that have collectively scarred the psychological fabric of an entire nation. Now, the absolute undeniable focal point of that massive, terrifying national expectation rests squarely on the remarkably broad, impossibly confident shoulders of a young man from Stourbridge who somehow seems to thrive, absorb, and grow even stronger from the exact same crushing pressure that would entirely destroy a lesser human being. V, who intimately and painfully understands the intensely isolating, claustrophobic reality of being labeled a global it boy, constantly pursued by relentless paparazzi flashes and subjected to the microscopically intense scrutiny of millions of obsessive fans analyzing his every single micro-expression, watches Bellingham's remarkably unfazed, effortlessly cool demeanor with a profound, deeply empathetic, and highly respectful sense of silent awe. The absolute, undeniable climax of this beautiful, unspoken artistic admiration violently exploded during England's incredibly tense, highly anticipated, and fiercely contested group stage clash against a wildly passionate, highly aggressive, and physically terrifying Colombian national team. The match was deliberately scheduled under the bright, artificial, and glamorous Hollywood lights of the colossal SoFi Stadium in Los Angeles, an incredibly fitting, star-studded cinematic backdrop for a player of Bellingham's undeniable blockbuster theatricality. The Colombian defense, notoriously famous for their dark arts, brutal tackling, and chaotic, suffocating pressing traps, had successfully turned the first 70 minutes of the crucial match into an ugly, fragmented, and frustratingly physical street fight, desperately trying to completely rattle the young English maestro. But Taeyong, perhaps watching the live broadcast from his luxurious hotel suite while gently stroking Yanton, knows a profound, undeniable truth about true, transcendent artists. When the surrounding noise becomes unbearably loud and violently chaotic, the true master simply chooses to completely change the underlying tempo of the song. In a moment of pure, unadulterated, and breathtaking sporting witchcraft that immediately drew inevitable whispered comparisons to the legendary French icon Zinedine Zidane, Bellingham received a terribly awkward, dangerously bouncing ball deep in the intensely crowded, hostile center of the midfield. Number 1. Jungkook. The golden prodigy, a relentless storm, the magic of Yamal. Have you ever witnessed the exact, terrifying moment when a seemingly innocent, wide-eyed youth suddenly transforms into an absolute, world-conquering titan right before your very eyes, entirely rewriting the fundamental laws of reality through sheer, unadulterated passion and explosive kinetic energy? For Jungkook, the universally acclaimed, phenomenally talented, and relentlessly driven Golden Maknae of BTS, the concept of achieving completely impossible, history-making feats at a staggeringly young age is not just a passing fascination, it is the definitive, pulse-pounding autobiography of his entire spectacular existence. When you are a global pop superstar who spectacularly debuted in the cutthroat music industry at the incredibly tender age of 15, willingly sacrificing your normal childhood to endure agonizing, bone-crushing training regimes, and eventually rising to single-handedly command the colossal, dazzling stage of the 2022 FIFA World Cup opening ceremony in Qatar with his iconic stadium-shaking anthem, Dreamers, you possess an incredibly rare, profoundly unique perspective on the crushing weight of global sporting spectacles. Jungkook intimately, viscerally understands the suffocating, terrifying pressure of standing alone in the absolute center of a roaring, blindingly lit stadium, entirely aware that literally billions of heavily scrutinizing eyes are completely fixed on your every single breath, expecting absolute, robotic perfection from a beating human heart. Therefore, as the breathtakingly massive, wildly unpredictable 2026 FIFA World Cup violently sweeps across the sprawling, vibrant continent of North America, Jungkook's absolute, unwavering, and intensely passionate obsession is entirely locked onto a player who perfectly, beautifully mirrors his own legendary meteoric rise to absolute global supremacy. The electrifying, ridiculously talented, and utterly fearless Spanish teenage prodigy Lamine Yamal. Just pause for a single breathless second and vividly picture the intensely powerful cinematic synergy beautifully connecting these two phenomenal golden boys across the vast expanse of the globe. You have Jungkook, the absolute undisputed king of modern pop, a fiercely competitive, highly athletic perfectionist who famously pushes his heavily tattooed, muscular physique to the absolute breaking point in the boxing ring and on the dance floor, sitting completely mesmerized in front of his massive screen, his dark, intensely focused eyes tracking every single blindingly fast movement of the young Spanish winger. And then, thousands of miles away, under the scorching, unforgiving North American sun, you have Lamine Yamal, a kid who is barely 19 years old, yet who carries the unimaginably heavy, historically rich legacy of the entire Spanish national team, the legendary La Roja, squarely upon his remarkably young, entirely fearless shoulders. Did you know the sheer, mind-bending magnitude of what Yamal is currently achieving on the pitch in 2026? After violently exploding onto the international scene during his mid-teens and completely shattering nearly every single youngest player record in the long, storied history of European football with Barcelona, Yamal has arrived in the United States completely devoid of the typical paralyzing fear that usually deeply infects young debutantes on the world's absolute biggest, most terrifying stage. Jungkook, who famously and fiercely approaches every single terrifying new challenge, whether it is directing a complex music video, mastering a difficult new instrument, or dominating a dangerous high-octane live stunt with a bold, unyielding, and wildly aggressive all-or-nothing mentality, sees his exact own reflection in Yamal's wonderfully arrogant, terrifyingly confident swagger on the lush green grass. The absolute breathtaking climax of this profound, unspoken brotherhood of prodigies spectacularly erupted during Spain's incredibly dangerous, physically brutal, and fiercely contested group stage battle against a fiercely determined, highly aggressive, and wildly physical Uruguayan national team. The massively important, physically brutal match unfolded inside the colossal, fiercely intimidating, and absolutely roaring AT&T Stadium in Dallas, Texas, creating a deeply suffocating, wildly chaotic atmosphere that would have instantly terrified and completely paralyzed a normal teenager. The hardened, veteran Uruguayan defenders, famously known across the entire globe for their dark, bruising defensive arts, heavy, bone-rattling tackles, and unapologetic, fierce intimidation tactics, aggressively decided to target the young Spanish phenomenon right from the opening whistle, desperately attempting to violently bully him out of the game. For the incredibly tense, highly frustrating first half of the match, Yamal was repeatedly viciously knocked to the ground, heavily fouled, and physically battered by men entirely old enough to be his father. But Jungkook, fiercely clenching his fists while watching the intense live broadcast, intuitively knows a profound, undeniable truth about individuals blessed with that exceedingly rare, golden spark of absolute genius. Pain, physical intimidation, and screaming doubters do not ever break them. They merely serve as the highly explosive, combustible fuel that inevitably ignites their most terrifying, unstoppable inferno. In a moment of pure, unadulterated, and absolutely jaw-dropping sporting magic that instantly sent massive, violent shockwaves across the entire internet and forced millions of screaming fans to desperately clutch their heads in pure disbelief, Yamal finally decided that he had absolutely enough of being heavily disrespected. Receiving a fiercely paced, slightly inaccurate pass on the extreme right flank, perfectly pinned against the white touchline by two massive, fiercely snarling Uruguayan defenders heavily intent on entirely crushing him, Yamal instinctively channeled the exact same explosive, wildly unpredictable, and violently beautiful kinetic energy that Jungkook famously unleashes during the intense, stadium-shaking dance break of On. Without even a single millisecond of hesitation, Yamal executed a blindingly fast, impossibly audacious sombrero flick, elegantly and disrespectfully lifting the heavy leather ball directly over the head of the first, desperately lunging defender, aggressively completely bypassing the brutal tackle. Before the ball could even touch the green grass again, he hit the absolute maximum accelerator, his incredibly agile legs pumping with a terrifying supernatural speed that left the second heavy defender completely choking in his dust. He ruthlessly cut inside towards the penalty box with a devastating, beautifully violent change of direction, entirely unbalancing the highly experienced Uruguayan goalkeeper with his fiercely unreadable, intensely focused eyes, before unleashing a spectacularly fierce, viciously powerful left-footed strike that completely tore through the humid Texas air and violently exploded into the absolute top corner of the net, instantly securing a breathtaking, dramatic, and fiercely fought victory for Spain. The massive, towering stadium instantly descended into pure,
unadulterated and deafeningly loud pandemonium, raining down unimaginable praise upon the teenage king. But Jungkook wasn't merely celebrating the spectacularly beautiful goal. He was entirely captivated by Yamal's brutally raw, intensely emotional, and heavily passionate reaction. The young prodigy didn't calmly walk back to the center circle. He wildly ripped off his sweat-drenched jersey, aggressively sprinting towards the corner flag with a fierce, terrifyingly loud, and wildly primal roar that visibly shook with the heavy, exhausting release of massive pent-up frustration and the absolutely undeniable, fiercely aggressive assertion of his absolute global dominance.